It's never who you think it is. About that. Night of the Reaper is a Shudder original written and directed by Brandon Christensen and also written by Ryan Christensen. I'm sensing a bit of a theme here. They have worked on films like Superhost and a couple other Shudder originals. Check out the respective IMDb pages for the full listens of their work. And this centers around Jessica Clements D, or Dina, but they just call her D. Not Dee Dee, not Dee Dee. Get out of my laboratory. She is coming back from college to visit her hometown, and she takes on a babysitting job when her friend Hattie basically comes down with a bit of the absolute shits, and she is taking care of the sheriff's son. Who is the sheriff's son? He is named Max. Who is the sheriff? He is Sheriff Rod. Not Rod from Birdemic, no, Soul Panels, 50% discount. This Sheriff Rod is played by Ryan Robbins, who starts to receive packages, and these packages tie to some murders that have taken place in this town, centered around somebody called the Reaper, hence the title, Night of the Reaper. What the fuck else did you think it was going to be involving? I don't know, somebody in a Reaper costume doing goddamn gardening. So nevertheless, we basically get this murder mystery with some slasher elements, a deliberately 80s retro throwback, where teens or really anybody under the age of like 25 to 30 is probably going to be wondering, why are these phones attached to the fucking wall? Not with a charger. Why are they attached to the fucking wall? Why do they have cords on them? You goddamn stupid-ass young people. You don't know what we had to go through. Anyway, so enough of old man yelling at clouds here. Yes, there are some, 80s elements here, down to some of the music basically being almost a bit Halloween-like, especially in the opening, and I will say the opening actually is the best part. Then it becomes more of a murder mystery with really not a lot of, transparency about who is actually involved in this. In fact, you pretty much can call one of the people right away. They tried for another little twist a little bit later on. And I like when they did that in Hard Eyes, even if Hard Eyes was very obvious of what it was doing. And this isn't awful. There are some neat little, scenes, a couple decent kills, and some decent acting. The acting actually really isn't all that bad. The problem is there just isn't enough meat on these bones to really sink your teeth into for very long before you chew down to the nub, and then you're like, okay, what else you got? Oh, we got more time left. And also the third act, while trying to explain things away, gets a little bit convoluted, a little bit silly, yet also very simplistic, where it's like, okay, yeah, kind of assume that, and it's not awful, it's just not great. I mean, I liked some of it. There's certainly talent behind the camera and in front of the camera, but it's on Shudder if you want to check it out. I don't really have much more to say before I get into spoilers. Is what it is, and what it is okay. Nothing offensive, just okay. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, we start off with Emily, who, I swear I recognize the actress playing Emily. She was in Curse of Chucky, but I swear I've seen her in stuff. Maybe she just looks like, some others that have been in some horror movies. She did all right. That's Summer H. Howell, who has been in a few projects, and she is babysitting and basically is taking care of a couple kids. There's this one kid that's worried about the evil skin eater that lives in his closet that comes out with epidermis in its, in its mouth, just holding the finger like this, like it's goddamn Family Guy. And so she ends up, this is a bit of a long opening though. Like, almost like they knew once they stopped this, it was going to have some issues. So, anyway, Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar plays, and it's time to clean up because the garage door opens, and oh no, and well, the not quite Halloween music made me laugh, and then there are notes left on this teddy bear that was against the chair, or was on the chair, that was against the closet with the evil skin eater that lives in the kid's closet. And it says, "You're pretty, Y-O-U-R." And the sister Marina basically says, no, that is just, that's bad grammar. And then there's another note, be mine. It turns out that Emily, has some secret admirer. Actually, it could be an ex of hers, I guess. But then she goes back to talk to Marina, like, oh, nice joke about this. And Marina's tied up with, this, like, another note on her. And, yeah, then Emily basically ends up killed. And that pretty much gets us to Dee showing back up. And then a character named Chad. And I will say that he plays his role well. That's been Cockle. I'm not laughing. Shut up. I'm not... Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if they happen to be watching this. I can't help it. Warming the cockles of your heart. Again. So sorry. I'm 44 years old. I should be more mature, but I never will be. But he jumps out from behind. Smile, you're on Candid Camera. Who remembers Candid Camera? Man, how did people, like, not punch people out doing that show? But then again, obviously, it was stage stuff. And if it wasn't staged, and boy, those people were a lot more patient than me, I would have decked the people filming me. Nevertheless, there's also a guy named Willis. But Chad has a camera. And conveniently, the killer was filming Emily a little bit earlier. And then, certain bits of items start getting sent to the sheriff or getting left in boxes all around. Inconvenient spots where the Sheriff Rudd, and Deputy Butch just happen to be going to. Again, I mean, it's deliberately retro and silly, and yes, there are a lot of crazy things and implausible things that happen in horror movies, but this was stretching it a little bit. First, he gets sent the garage door opener that was of the murder house, where, all the murders took place, hence the title Murder House. And Dee's dad is not really doing all that well. And the mother is, but there seems to be something that, the movie's not telling us. Almost like somebody that was murdered happens to be tied to this family. I wonder if you can guess it. And there's also an assistant or secretary or phone operator at the sheriff's station, Dottie. I don't know who the actress is. She at least absorbed the 80s aesthetic well. And yes, suddenly tapes are getting sent of the killings. There's one of this guy, Connor Davis. And then basically Hattie, after, meeting with Dee for a little bit, ends up getting the shits real bad. She takes over the babysitting job. We get 2 dead dogs, by the way, in 21 minutes. I mean, we don't see the dogs die on camera, but I don't necessarily know if that was needed, but it is what it is. And there is a cop named Elizabeth that just happens to be cleaning up this stuff and just, says something, somewhat innocuous or seemingly innocuous to the sheriff. And Chad basically is arrested. He is talking about his, constitutional rights, that kind of stuff. And yes, he films stuff, but he doesn't film snuff films. He's not involved in. He's involved in this, by the way. He's involved in this, just in case you can't guess. But the sheriff's starting to get more and more unhinged because it turns out that his wife actually died in a car accident. And there you are. It's just... It becomes more and more obvious what's happening here. So you're not supposed to go into the basement because the sheriff has a bridal dress and a mannequin. And you might think we're leading to the sheriff being the killer. We're not leading to the sheriff being the killer, but I actually think that might have been a little bit better than what they ended up explaining. But they mentioned George Brett, so I thought this was Kansas City. If you don't know who George Brett is, then you're probably too young to know about that era of baseball. But it was actually filmed in Canada. And you can tell, actually, because Canada has a lot of hallmarks, like a lot of woods and a lot of this, I don't know, just a lot of woods. They have a lot of goddamn, wildlife up there. I don't think that's wildlife. So Willis is the jock-like guy. He is brought in. Dee was filmed, and it turns out, there's like this tape that was sent, and Chad had it. Chad and Willis were actually filming this, so maybe they're in on this whole goddamn thing. I already said Chad was. And instant Foggy Reaper, and Dee's wondering what the hell is going on. I thought Butch could be in on it for a split second because of how he was trying to maybe keep the sheriff from breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law. And then we get clips of the House on Haunted Hill, the original, with Lance running his head into the goddamn wall. Good old riff tracks. Handy is on her own, going down the only road she's ever known. She talks to Haiti for a little bit. Haiti isn't doing all that well, though. And there's a red room and an 80s synth, like score playing. And it turns out to be Willis's house. There's a tape on the bed, and Willis is supposed to deliver it to the sheriff, but he gets arrested, busted in the nose as well. The power is out in the sheriff's house, conveniently, and it stumbles from here. I mean, I know what they were trying to do, but it stumbled. I almost think that if they just gone with the thing of the sheriff being in on it and all this stuff, it would have been better. But the sheriff is yelling at Willis or whatever, how did you get this tape? Because the tape was of his wife's accident. I thought it was a patch of ice. And right there you're thinking, oh shit, he was the one that set it up. No, he wasn't the one that set it up. He thought it was a patch of ice that she hit. And no, she ended up crashing, and then the killer bashed her head against the goddamn deal. And Haiti had also mentioned something about, there's an empty spot in the sheriff's bed. Maybe she could get in it, so maybe Haiti's the one doing it. But then we see Dee at the house, and she basically ends up kind of being the panicked damsel in distress. The Reaper is arriving at the goddamn house filming, and here's her talking on the goddamn phone. Meanwhile, the police arrive at this pharmacy to discover this bag that may have this explosive device. I'm really trying to be careful with the wording here. And then suddenly, the killer finds a recording of, just this tape recording of Dee saying all this stuff. And then Dee attacks the Reaper. So Dee has been the killer this whole time. No, Dee has been trying to stop the killer. Because it turns out that she set this whole thing up because it was Elizabeth. Who is Elizabeth? She was the one cleaning the goddamn dog off of that goddamn road, and saw Dee for a brief second at a pharmacy. Because Elizabeth has been obsessed with sleeping with the sheriff or being with the sheriff. And Elizabeth caused this whole thing because she wanted to be with the sheriff. Why? I mean, why? Why do we need the thing is, the explanation doesn't really justify, how badly paced this third act is. But why is Dee doing this? Does she also love the sheriff? Is everybody just trying to get with Sheriff Rod for his rod? But no, that's not the case. Basically, Dee is doing this because Emily was her sister, and now she wants revenge. And she almost gets her. There's a bunch of Reapers hanging in the goddamn, Reaper costumes hanging in the forest, conveniently. And she manages to shoot her in the leg, she being Elizabeth getting shot in the leg. But then, suddenly, Chad shows up, and Chad is Elizabeth's son, or Elizabeth's accomplice. I mean, I don't really give a shit. At this point, could have been a fucking, Mary Kay Letourneau situation. That happened in my state, fun fact, and she was a bitch and deserved what she got. So, Chad also mentions offhand while Dee is tied up, and Elizabeth is almost bleeding out because she got shot in the fucking leg, and Dee ain't doing too well. She got a head injury. Dee ended up basically getting Max out of the house. You're probably wondering where the kid was. She talked to Willis and got the kid out. Kind of ended up conveniently drugging him a little bit just to get him out. And also had drugged or spiked Haiti's coffee or drink or whatever the fuck it is. So she didn't have to worry about getting the babysitting job. It's a good thing she remembered which fucking cup it was, because that would have been weird. But Chad also mentions that he killed a cop. He could have killed Butch. He could have killed one of the other two cops that were in that police station, because they didn't have a lot of a big cast, but nevertheless, Dee basically had Willis help her, and now, all of a sudden, Elizabeth has her, stabs her in the leg, has her pinned down, shows her footage of Emily being killed, and says, now you're going to join her. And then Sheriff Rod shows up and shoots Elizabeth. But doesn't know it's Elizabeth. She takes off her mask. I did this because she did all this stuff and I was going to tell you. And then he says, you were at my wedding and you were at Emily's funeral. And she's trying to pick up this knife and everything, this kind of stuff. And boom, she got popped in the head. And then the idea is, as well, they don't want to put this on Dee, and her blood's in the house. But here's what we'll do, the sheriff says. We'll set it up like, oh, she's been, she had all this stuff, and we'll conveniently find all this evidence at her house. You might be wondering what happened to Chad, by the way, but during all this fracas, he answered the walkie-talkie that Dee had, that Willis was calling on, and it exploded, law-abiding citizen style. And his head exploded. Why not at this point? So yeah, they're just going to set all that stuff up on Elizabeth, and Chad's dead body is found there, and whatever. It's fine. It's fine. C+. It's fine. I don't know. There was just something about this that didn't click for me. It was what it was. It was not bad. It just wasn't great. But there are certainly worse Shudder originals you can see. There are better ones, but this is at least well made, even if it's not necessarily interesting. So agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritland. Until we reap again, happy trails to you.